Victor Thorne's office always reeked of old power and hidden rot. The thick smell of cedar mingled with the gray smoke from a half-burnt Cohiba cigar, creating a dense and stifling atmosphere. The ticking of the clock on the wall sounded heavy, like a hammer striking a coffin in a silent funeral. I stood there, my trembling hands hidden behind my back, feeling the cold air from the air conditioner blowing directly onto my neck.
On the polished mahogany desk was a navy blue folder, the one I had accidentally found in the safe last night. Numbers danced, money circled through shell companies in the Cayman Islands, all leading to a single name, Thorne Enterprises. Next to that folder was a pristine white sheet of paper, but its content was as dark as the soul of the man sitting opposite me. It was a personal debt note worth $50 million. Sign it, Chris.
Victor Thorne's voice was deep and dry, like gravel clashing at the bottom of a ravine. He took a sip of whiskey, letting the crystal ice clink against the glass like a silent warning. The chandelier above cast a sallow light, reflecting onto his angular face and cold eyes. You know this is the only way to protect this family and to protect yourself. I looked at Elena, the wife I once swore to protect forever. She stood beside her father, wearing a luxurious black silk dress, but her eyes were empty, like a bottomless black hole. Elena didn't look at me. She was busy adjusting the sparkling diamond bracelet on her wrist. Her silence was like a razor-sharp blade, cutting through the last bit of hope left in my heart. Elena, do you really want me to sign for these loans? My voice cracked, small and pathetic in the vastness of the room. She looked up slightly, her bright red lips curling into a half-smile full of contempt. Don't overreact, Chris. You should feel honored that you're finally useful to the Thorne family instead of just sitting around and spending our money. Victor pushed the Mont Blanc pen toward me, the nib shimmering under the leck like a gun barrel aimed straight at my chest. This family gave you status, wealth, that a lowly financial analyst like you couldn't even dream of. Now is the time for you to pay your debt. I picked up the pen, feeling the cold premium resin cling to my sweaty palm. Outside the window, the pines in the aspen garden shook under the snowstorm like wailing ghosts. Every letter of my name appearing on the white paper was heavy like an eternal shackle. I had signed the death warrant for my own career. They thought I was a coward, a pawn easily manipulated by fear and greed. But as the pen touched the final period, I felt a terrifying calm spreading through my chest. They didn't know that inside this weak shell, I was preparing for a reversal they would never expect. I walked out of the office, leaving behind Victor's low laughter and the heavy scent of cigars. The Thorne mansion glittered under the decorative lights, but to me it felt like a giant and stifling glass cage. 5 years ago, I entered here as a promising financial analyst, a young man who believed he had won the lottery by marrying into the Thorn Empire. They bought me with lavish parties, custom-tailored suits, and the glamorous title of son-in-law of the Thorns. But the truth quickly emerged behind that shimmering veneer. I was just a ghost in the safe room, a puppet accountant used to legitimize dirty numbers. Every dinner at this mansion was a sophisticated and cruel mental torture. I still remember last year's Christmas party when Elena openly mocked me in front of VIP guests.
"He's very good at math," she said while sipping champagne, her eyes sparkling with ridicule. "Especially calculating how to spend all the money my father hands out every month." Laughter echoed through the table, sharp and dry like crystal shattering on the marble floor. Victor Thorn often looked at me like a piece of cheap furniture, a tool that could be replaced at any time.
They backed me into a corner, forcing me to put my name on shell investment funds, massive debts used to launder money from illegal activities. That injustice seeped into my flesh and blood, turning respect into a smoldering resentment. In the vast and cold bedroom, Elena was often absent, or if she was home, she treated me as if I didn't exist. The scent of her expensive perfume mixed with the scent of a stranger every time she returned late, a public humiliation I had to swallow. They believed I was weak, someone who would never dare raise his head for fear of losing a regal life. But in long, sleepless nights, I had quietly copied every line of malicious code, every piece of evidence of Thorn Enterprises' fraud. I sat before the computer screen in the dark, watching the numbers dance and feeling my heartbeat rapidly in my chest. I spent hours communicating through encrypted channels with the FBI, sending small pieces of a giant criminal puzzle. My silence all these years was not cowardice. It was the patience of a hunter setting a trap. I looked at my reflection on the glass window, a pale, tired face, but the eyes had become razor sharp. "It's almost time," I whispered to the darkness. They thought I was the pawn who would take the blame for them when everything collapsed. They didn't know that this very pawn would be the one to overturn the entire chessboard and push them into the abyss of justice. The scent of snow outside was so clean, unlike the smell of lies covering this house. I would reclaim my honor, even if I had to burn down the empire they were so proud of. A month passed since the night I signed that dead note, and the atmosphere in the Thorn Mansion grew increasingly thick with hypocrisy. Tonight, the Thorns were hosting the Light of Hope charity gala, an ironic name for a place used to launder the dirtiest of money. The scent of thousands of white lilies covered the banquet hall, trying to overwhelm the musty smell of rot smoldering beneath the polished marble floors. The sound of violins played gracefully, but to me, it sounded like the screeching of ropes tightening around my throat. I stood in a hidden corner, holding a glass of red wine, silently observing the elite faces smiling and raising their glasses. They wore hand-tailored suits and expensive silks, radiating the aura of success built on the blood of others.
Elena stood in the center of the hall, radiant in a bright red dress, her arm tightly linked with a young bank executive. They flirted openly right before my eyes, a public humiliation orchestrated to test the limits of the cowardly husband. "Oh, Chris, don't just stand there like a rotting wooden statue," Elena called out, her voice shrill and full of mockery.
She approached, the pungent scent of expensive perfume and the smell of liquor from the man beside her hitting me in the face. "Come and toast Julian. He just helped my father handle a very large investment portfolio." The man named Julian looked at me with contempt, his lips curling into a condescending half-smile. I bowed my head, letting my hair hide my burning eyes, my hands gripping the wine glass so hard my knuckles turned white. "Very nice to meet you, Julian," I whispered, my voice trembling perfectly, like someone terrified of his own presence. Their laughter rang out harshly, mixing with the sharp clinking of crystal, like knives stabbing my pride. Victor Thorne stood in the distance, cigar in hand, nodding slightly with satisfaction at seeing me still playing the role of a weakling perfectly. He believed this $50 million debtor would never dare say a word for fear of death and for fear of losing the breadcrumbs he handed out. But beneath this expensive tailored suit, a tiny recording device was quietly capturing every promise of a bribe between Victor and corrupt officials. In my pocket, the phone vibrated with short pulses, encrypted signals from the FBI agent waiting outside this circle of light. Every step I took, every forced smile I gave was a carefully calculated move in this life or death game. Tension escalated with every breath as I snuck into Victor's office while the party was at its peak. The smell of cedar and new paper in the office made my mind exceptionally clear. I quietly plugged the portable hard drive into the server, watching the data copying status bars move slowly, as if testing the last of my patience. The sound of footsteps on the marble hallway made my heart thud against my chest, cold sweat running down my back. If caught red-handed now, I knew I would never see the sunrise of tomorrow. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my hands from shaking as I pulled the hard drive out just as the office door swung open. It was Elena. She stood there, her face flushed from wine and triumph, looking at me with unconcealed contempt. "What are you doing here, Chris? Looking for a few more cents to pay your debt to my father?" I pretended to panic, hiding the hard drive in my jacket pocket, looking down at the cold floor. I just wanted to find some quiet space." She laughed, a hoarse laugh full of the arrogance of someone who believed she held everything in her hand. Truly a useless coward. She turned away, leaving me in the darkness of the room, reeking of lies. Her humiliation tonight was the final fuel for the fire of revenge smoldering in my soul. They thought they were dancing the dance of gods on the peak of power and money. They didn't know that I had scattered shards of glass and death warrants named Justice all over this stage. The grandfather clock in the room struck 11, its deep chime echoing through the oak walls.
The tide was turning, and I would be the one standing on the shore to watch them sink in their own filthy mud. Tomorrow, when dawn rises, the Thorn Empire will be nothing but a pile of ashes of shame. And the coward they always trampled will be the last one standing to breathe the air of freedom. The night of Thorn Enterprises' 30th anniversary gala was so brilliant it could outshine the stars in the New York sky. Giant crystal chandeliers cast a luxurious golden light, reflecting off diamond-encrusted dresses and expensive champagne. The scent of thousands of white lilies mixed with expensive perfume created an atmosphere thick with pride and power. But beneath that perfect veneer, I felt the rot groaning in every breath of the room. Victor Thorn stood on the podium, looking as imposing as an emperor preparing to merge the whole world into his empire. He held the giant merger contract in his hand, the final move to legitimize all the dirty money into clean assets forever. "Come here, Chris," Victor called my name over the microphone, his voice booming across the hall, carrying a condescending grace. Every eye fixed on me, mocking whispers hissed like cobras in the brush. I walked onto the stage with shoulders slightly slumped, face pale and eyes full of trembling. The final performance of the cowardly son-in-law. Elena stood beside her father, looking at me with a condescending half-smile, her hands busy adjusting her diamond bracelet as a habit of flaunting. "Sign here, son-in-law," Victor whispered, his breath reeking of whiskey and absolute triumph. "Do what you do best. Put your name down and stay silent." He handed the Mont Blanc fountain pen to me, the nib shimmering like a sharp blade ready to end my life. I took the pen, sensing the slight vibration beneath the marble floor, not from the footsteps of guests, but from the FBI tactical team surrounding the building. I looked straight into Victor's eyes, and for the first time in 5 years, I did not bow my head. "I won't sign, Victor." My voice rang out, no longer trembling, but as stern as steel hitting stone, drowning out the smooth jazz. A sudden silence enveloped the hall, so tense one could hear the soft snow falling outside the glass. The smile on Victor's face vanished, his face turning from rosy to pale with shock and rage. "What did you say? Have you lost your mind, Chris?" Elena screamed, her voice cracking between humiliation and panic. I pulled out my phone, the screen showing the FBI agent's icon and a status bar indicating data transfer complete. Your empire wasn't built on intelligence, Victor. It was built on lies, and I am the one holding the key to the truth. Just then, all the crystal lights suddenly went out, leaving the hall in darkness for a second,
before the bright red emergency lights blared.
The sound of crystal shattering rang out as champagne glasses were dropped, red wine spilling across white linen like bloody stains. FBI, everyone stay still! The booming command tore through the luxurious space. Tactical flashlights swept across the hall like lightning, signaling the end. Victor Thorne stumbled back, his hands trembling as he dropped the billion-dollar folder into the puddle of ruined wine.
Elena collapsed onto the floor, her eyes wide with horror, watching the agents move in to restrain her father. I stood there, in the center of the storm, feeling freedom flowing through my veins. Victor looked at me, his eyes dilated as he realized the ghost he always trampled was the one who dethroned him from the inside. "Why, you had everything," he croaked, his voice now just a weak whimper.
I leaned down, looking straight at the man trembling at my feet. "You taught me that those who lose control lose everything, Victor. And tonight, I am the only one truly in control." The sound of metal handcuffs clinking together was neat and final, ending an era of filthy greed. Justice doesn't need to be loud. It only needs the right moment to rise from the depths of humiliation. The first dawn after the grand gala did not bring the harsh yellow of greed, but a silvery gray, pure and gentle. The snowstorm had completely stopped, leaving a layer of pristine white covering everything. So clean, it looked like a freshly cleared stage. I stood outside the Thorne Mansion gates, watching the FBI patrol cars begin to roll away, carrying the people who once treated me like a cheap toy. Victor Thorne sat behind the black glass, his face now just a pale mass of flesh trembling under the daylight. Elena was no longer screaming. She looked at me through the car window with sunken, empty eyes, full of late regret. But I didn't look at them. I looked up at the vast sky, feeling my lungs fill with clean air, no longer tainted by the smell of cigars and lies. For 5 years, I had let silence envelop me like a protective layer of armor against toxic insults. They thought they could control me with contempt and filthy debt notes. They had mistaken my patience for cowardice, my submission for stupidity. But true power doesn't lie in the numbers in a bank account or expensive silk dresses. True power is peace of mind, the certainty that you fought for what was right without losing yourself. I reached into my jacket pocket, touching the hard drive containing the final pieces of the truth, feeling it lighter than ever. And now, everything is truly over. The city in the distance was waking up to its frantic pace, indifferent to the collapse of an empire that just happened in the dark. The Thorne Mansion still glittered under the morning sun, but now it was just a soulless structure, cold and lonely. I stepped into the Witness Protection Program vehicle waiting behind. I didn't take anything from that house, except for my cleansed honor.
The past was no longer a heavy boulder weighing down my shoulders every time I woke up. It had become a solid foundation for me to start a new life, a new chapter, without the footsteps of greedy men. Betrayal and greed had burned themselves out, leaving behind an absolute peace.
This journey was never about revenge. It was about the restoration of justice and dignity. I smiled, my first real smile in years, as the car drove away from the snowy Aspen region. The sea of people out there might call me an insider, a family betrayer, or a silent hero. But to me, I was simply a man who had found his own freedom. Ahead was a long road, and this time I would be the only one behind the wheel.